Hi, the following podcast is brought to you by Radical Road Brewery, the best craft beer in the heart of Leslieville. Find them at 1177 Queen Street East. That's Radical Road Brewery.
Hey, this is Shad, and you're listening to Welcome to the Music.
Awesome. Shad, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on. I think, the first time I saw you in concert, I think, you opened for Kanon a long time ago. In Toronto, there was a show. I can't. I think the place doesn't exist anymore. It's one of those lost venues. I think there might be a condo there now, but that was an amazing show.
Yeah, that many years ago now. Yeah, that was. I have fond memories of that tour for sure. The Toronto date was at Cool House.
Was it Cool House? It was near the water, just off of just south of the Gardner Expressway. That was Cool House?
That's right. It was
okay.
It was at Cool House, yeah. Which is it's now defunct. Yeah, I don't know what's there. I do think it's still a big empty space or something. I'm not sure it got demolished and turned into condos, but that was around that time there was a lot of shows there. It was a great room, you could pack a good 2,000 people in there and good sound. It was nice. And
anywhere you stood in that hall was fine. You felt like you were like up close and personal.
That's right.
Yeah, it was really good. Have you stayed in touch with Kanon?
No. And I don't know too many people who have. He's been off the radar, right? So when we toured, Waving Flag had kind of taken off.
Yeah.
That big song of his, if people remember that, it was quite a huge international thing, and it took off. And then he put out an album after that, and then I don't think he's released an album since.
Yeah, I heard he was doing movies or trying to get into movies or making movies or something.
That's what I heard. Yeah, I heard he got into acting and writing and things on the film side of things. But no, we didn't really keep in touch. And I remember around the time of that album, of that tour rather, things were really starting to heat up for him. Or I can't remember exactly if they were starting to heat up or they had fully heated up. But I do remember he was pretty busy on that tour. It was full on. Fond memories of that for sure.
Yeah, that was a great show. Loved that show. Cool. As I was doing research, and I don't know why I didn't know this. It seems probably everybody knows that you were born in Kenya. You must have come here when you were like a baby, or?
Yeah. I came here when I was a baby. So my family is from Rwanda.
Okay.
My family's from Rwanda. And long story short, I was born in Kenya. My older sister was born in Uganda.
Where in Uganda?
She was born. Where was she born? I don't know exactly the city, to be honest. I think I'm blanking on it.
Yeah.
Because we never go back. What is your family?
Yeah, my family's from there. So my wife was born in Arusha, Tanzania. But she grew up in Nairobi.
Okay.
My parents were from Uganda, from Bale.
Bale. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't know how far away from Kampala it is. Or the main airport, which is not in Kampala. I can't remember where the main airport is.
Yeah, it's in
Entebbe. That's right. So you've never been back.
So here's the thing. Because my family is from Rwanda.
Yeah.
When we go back, we go to Rwanda.
You go to Rwanda. Okay. Yeah, of course.
My parents retired and moved back, you know, like.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we go back all the time, but we go to Rwanda. Now, we've stopped in Uganda a couple of times.
Yeah.
Because my parents were there for like at least a decade. They were there, right? So
yeah,
they probably left around the time your wife's family left, or your family, Idi Amin times.
Yeah, that's right.
They had to go.
Yeah.
And my parents had to go too. So and we went to Kenya, and that's where I was born. So anyways, long story short, we go back all the time, but we go to...
You go to Rwanda. Okay.
We've been a couple times. And then for my 36th birthday, I asked my dad to take me to where I was born in Kenya.
Okay.
Just so I could see it. You know,
yeah.
we have no connection to there. My family was only there for 2 years.
Yeah.
My parents were we were only there for 2 years, but there's something about just seeing where you were born, you know what I mean? Like actual place where I was born, even though really our roots are in Rwanda, there's still some curiosity for me.
Of course.
About, you know, city that I've seen on my passport and, you know, citizenship certificate or whatever for all these years, but never been able to see it. So anyways.
Yeah, it was the same thing with me. I was parents are in Uganda, 72, they had to leave. Yeah. And they went to England where I was born.
Okay.
At a hospital at St. Mary's in Sidcup, England. Which means nothing to me, but you know, on one of the trips you had to go to the hospital just to see it. And it was like, okay, all right, let's go somewhere else now.
Exactly. So here's a funny story. There's a friend of mine here in Toronto.
Yeah.
And we've been friends for, you know, many years, known him around through friends of friends, hang out, whatever. And then I find out that his aunts taught in my mom's high school in Uganda.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And so then he was sending me photos and I was sending them to my mom, but it wasn't exactly the same era. But
that is crazy.
Yeah. You know, that's Canada for you, right? Like,
I got it. As you were telling that story, it reminded me of a story that my wife has. This was like awesome story. So Barack Obama becomes president.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had all heard of Barack Obama, you know, prior to him becoming president. But as soon as that happened, my wife is going, that last name sounds so familiar. And she starts going through like old, maybe albums or, you know, talking to my mom.
Yeah.
For 1 year, while she was in school in Nairobi, there was, I want to say a teacher that taught German, or just a teacher that just taught for 1 year. Maybe German was not in the picture, but for 1 year they had a teacher whose last name was Obama, who just happened to be his half sister.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm like 3 people removed from.
Yeah. No, when he got elected, I was suddenly extra Kenyan when he got.
You told people, yeah. I thought you were from Rwanda. No, from Kenya.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and Olympics. I turn up the Kenyan too.
I hear you. Listen, congrats on the new album.
Thank you.
I've heard maybe a half a dozen songs. There's two that I really keep on listening to. But congrats on it. It was done pre-pandemic. I've heard.
Yeah. For the most, like, it wasn't done, but it was all written and mostly recorded. And then in my process, there's like a lot of tweaking after that. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was all written and mostly recorded, like, pre-pandemic. There's just no rush to fix or put it out in a, you know, non-touring time.
Was that something you struggled with, whether to release it or whether to like just let me hold back because I'm not going to go anywhere?
Yeah, well, what it did was create a situation where I was just in no rush to do that last 20-25%. You know what I mean? Like, as human beings, some more than others, but I think in general, as human beings, we just need deadlines. And, when it's like, sure, be finished. It's like, well, yeah, but like, does it really matter if I'm done in, 2 months? No, not really. It's like, then I won't be done in 2 months. Like that's how human beings are. So it wasn't a struggle. It was more like that kind of situation.
Yeah, I hear you. Are you looking forward to going back on the road next year?
Yeah, for sure. It's like, it's what performing is what kind of, I don't know, makes it feel complete, if that makes sense. Like the whole experience of making an album and putting it out. It's like once you connect with people in a live environment around the music is when the whole experience of creating something and sharing it feels complete. I still love just putting stuff out, like I'm really glad it's out. It feels really good to share it in this digital world, but something doesn't feel completely done about sharing it until I'm sharing space with my people, until I'm in that real in-person way. So all that to say, I am looking forward to it for sure. Yeah.
That's really interesting. It's interesting you said that. We spoke with a friend of yours, Paul Chin.
Yeah.
I don't know how long ago we spoke, but he had something really interesting to say because we talked about performing live and some of the stuff that he's been doing over the past, I guess, 2 years now, where, he'll just do stuff over Twitch or YouTube. And he says, one thing really struck me. He said that he's found love in performing online, these online shows that he does. Because he says everybody that tunes into that wants to be there. Like 100%, they want to be there. And he would talk about performing live before, and people would maybe just show up, or, they just pop into a place and he'd be performing, and not everybody was there to see him, to experience his music. But he says now, he says he loves it so much. I'm curious whether or not you've had thoughts about that, whether you've performed online in the past little while.
Yeah. I haven't really done that, but I do understand his perspective. And it's kind of the cool thing about music now is there's so many different, how can I put it? Lanes, for lack of a better term. Right. Yeah. And so I could understand that for artists like him. Like he makes what he does is like really grounded in like dance music. Right. So totally, I could see his experience of playing live being a mix of like, people that are really engaged and in what he's doing, but also could just be party people, could also, like it could be a real mix. Versus like my shows, because what I do is so grounded in like storytelling. Yeah. It's like, usually if people are coming out to see me, it's like they're coming to like engage in like pretty deeply. They're not really coming for a passive experience, Yeah. So I think that's like a little bit just the nuances of like what he does versus what I do. But, and then also the online spaces, like, my DJ friends like him have found something really cool in the online concert sort of world, like my friends that are on Twitch. Yeah. And it's like actually a really beautiful community around DJing. Yeah. And I'm not sure the same thing exists for artists like me.
Fair enough.
In terms of performing online. Like you could do it, but there isn't that community like there is on Twitch that's like really, I don't know. It's all these little funny intricacies and nuances of like just different lanes, different artists and what they do and what exists online, what doesn't exist online. and just how the stuff evolves. But yeah, I have just like not really bothered with the online performing thing. I've just felt like it's not quite. I imagine it being right for me.
Yeah,
for what I do.
People have asked you, and you've people have asked whether you like the live performance versus, being in studio. And maybe your answer is different depending on, what's happening, but you've answered in the past, you like the studio side of things. What is it about the studio or wherever it is that you make your music that is more home to you than on stage?
Well, I think if I had to, think of myself and what I do in two parts, let's say like writer and performer.
Yeah.
I would say I'm more of a writer at heart than a performer.
Okay.
Right. I get more excited about creating than performing. I like both.
Yeah.
But if I had to, call that split, I'd say it's something like 70-30 or something,
Really? Okay.
I think I perform because I kind of like it. And like, I naturally write stuff in my own voice, and it's just easier to perform it.
Okay.
And, I've heard some different people talk about the same thing. Like I've heard like Louis C.K. talk about that too. Like, it's just more efficient. It's more expedient. It's more efficient for him to just perform it, just do it. Like, are in it, then try to get somebody else to do it. You know what I mean? And I think there's an element of that with me. So yeah, I think that what excites me the most is making stuff up,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you written a book, or is that something that you're looking forward to doing one day?
No, I'm not. I don't read enough. I'm not really like literature enough guy.
All right.
I like books well enough, but like the people I know that are really good writers in that form, they read all the time.
You sound like someone who reads all the time, though. Like your lyrics, the themes you talk about, like I would guess this guy subscribes to like magazines and reads every morning.
Well, look, I read a lot more nonfiction than fiction. When I think of reading, I think fiction. I think like literature. People that have some style with how they do it. With how they put it down. Like I've always been, even as a little kid, I was drawn to nonfiction. Like when you had to bring home that little Scholastic thing and order books.
Yeah.
I hated that. Like I was like, and I literally would read the encyclopedia.
Okay, look at that.
I would read the phone book. I would read. I loved reading statistics. Like, so all that to say, like, I read, but I don't really consider myself a reader like the people I know who can write in that form. Like they read fiction. So anyhow, all that to say, I don't think I would write a book, but I would love to write for like performance, but other people performance, whether that's music or television or like that. I think I would gravitate towards more than trying to write a book, even a memoir. I don't think I could do it.
A musical, maybe.
And no, I couldn't write a musical.
Okay.
I don't know plays enough. I don't know like music, but I watch a ton of TV. I think I could write for TV.
Yeah. What do you watch these days?
Just finished White Lotus.
Okay.
I've been keeping up on my Succession. But I went deep during the pandemic. I feel like I watched every single thing. Like,
I hear you.
I feel like I've now watched every show.
My son just found Tiger King Part 2 that just came out, I guess today.
Oh, that's crazy. Wow. Okay, yeah, I got to dive into that.
Can you imagine that came out beginning of last year, but it feels like it came out years ago.
Yeah, that's a real pandemic show.
Oh, yeah.
Almost more than any show that I associate, and I think everyone associates with like.
That's so true.
Pandemic, yeah.
That is so true. Before you released the album, you released a couple of singles. I think like in the spring, there was a couple of drops. You released the album in October. Is there's a lot of whether it's DJs or rappers or people in hip hop, there's either people think, okay, I'm going to release an album. There's other people that are just, every fortnight or every month they're dropping a single and there's no thought of like a physical album. Mm-hmm. How do you when you think of, whether it was your last album, A Short Story of a War, or this album, Tao, like what are you thinking when you release that? Is there a project, an album in mind that you're filling up, or are there just songs that come out?
Yeah. For me, I need a bigger creative project to just like get me going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and it's because I come from the album era, so I'm still an album artist. But at this point, it's like, I need that to, like, the idea of just making one song just doesn't excite me. Like,
okay.
I feel like I need a bigger creative challenge just to feel excited about making music,
Yeah.
So I kind of persist in that album mode that may or may not, make sense. But what I think is true now is that kind of like I was talking about before when we were talking about Paul Chin and myself,
Yeah.
What I think is true now is that there's just so many different ways to do it. Like it's not that the album is dead, but the album's certainly diminished, but it's not dead.
Of course,
it's something that you can do or not do. You know what I mean? Like, you could be an album artist or not, or a single artist. Like, that makes sense. It all kind of makes sense, and you sort of get in where you fit in, I think is the way. But it's endlessly fascinating to me because it always changes. Like, this album, we put out I think 5 singles before the album came out.
Okay.
Which I've never done before.
Yeah.
Like, I've always put out 1 song, 2, maybe 3, but I just feel like it's endlessly fascinating. You just try things because the industry is constantly changing. And by industry, I also just mean on a super fundamental level, just like people's listening changes, right? How people prefer to listen just changes. And so you got to test it and see, and so I feel like I'm in that position every single time I put out an album. I'm never in a position where it's like, oh, I know how it works. It's like, maybe I know how it worked, but like, it's changing. The industry has never been the same longer than like 3-4 years in my experience.
Yeah. It has changed. It continues to change. It's mind-boggling. That's for sure. Yeah. I want to talk about a couple of songs and the videos that go with them, because that was an interesting experience as well. But the song "Work," you got Scratch Bastard on that. It was interesting when Gregg was talking to me yesterday about that song. He says as soon as he heard it, he said "Scratch Bastard." That's the Scratch Bastard song. Which was interesting to me. Like, when I heard it, because I wrote down the notes and I go, it's funny you said that. I wrote down Nirvana. Like, when I heard that song, I'm thinking about like just jumping up and down, like, like a Nirvana song, which wasn't the reason why I wore this t-shirt, but that's what I thought about that. But you've got in the video, and I don't know if you've done this with a bunch of videos that you release. you've got a screenshot of a text message in there. Tell me about, what is that text message?
You know what? I don't even remember what I think I know what the text message is.
There's lyrics of the song in there, but it's like you're talking to somebody.
Yeah. That's literally me texting the director.
Okay.
And he had asked me, what are some words from the song? Like, if we're going to highlight some words from the song, like there's moments in the song where it'll just like flash one word and bold.
That's right. Yeah.
What words would you want those to be? And so that whole text message is just like, I was just going through the song in my head, and I would type a word if it was one that I thought was like, I could imagine in bold.
Yeah.
And then decided to just include that text message as sort of like a nod to the lyrics, but also a nod to, I guess just like digital electronic communications and, where that fits into the whole work and busyness conversation, So, that's what that is. But, worked on that beat with Scratch Bassett. I've worked with him a ton.
Yeah.
Like incredible DJ and producer. We were like, it's cool that you brought up Nirvana, because like it definitely intentionally has this like punk industry feeling to it. And the big drum break we sample is from a rock band, kind of like a prog-ish rock band. And then the verses get stripped down to a very old school, 808s and hi-hats kind of break, right? So to me it's got both of those because it harkens back to like old school hip hop, which started at the same time as punk, and so those two scenes are kind of like they're together in my mind. Like
interesting.
When I think of punk and hip hop, especially in that era, they're close together in my brain.
They sort of come out. Well, you worked on the documentary. Did you feel they came out? They both are a response to the same socioeconomic plight of people?
That's part of it, and another part of it to me is just like aesthetically, they both came out. They both came out stripping things all the way down. Right? Like rock music, I don't know as much about rock music, but rock music, when I think about 70s rock, I think about like big.
Yes.
Like things had gotten Led Zeppelin, Queen, and not to mention like prog, like, 10-minute experimental, blah, and then punk brings it down to like 3 chords max, and we can barely play those.
Yeah.
And it's all about the feeling. And then hip hop is the exact same thing. Like 70s black music, you're thinking about disco, you're thinking about super experimental soul, and with the strings and the horn hits and the, and it's like, no, nothing. Strip it down to just 808 and hit, nothing. And just raw attitude. Like when we interviewed Russell Simmons about Def Jam, he's like, yeah, we didn't want any melody in our songs whatsoever. Like, he's like, we hated that. We hated everything. We hated Michael Jackson. We hated everything. And so
that's the spirit, right? That's the whole
it's the attitude.
Spirit, yeah.
It's the punk spirit. So I feel like they both started from this really similar place of aesthetically rejecting the maximalism, and just like, no, people are losing the point. It's just about what you have to say and style and attitude and that's it. And so they're both together in my mind, you know, punk and hip hop. I'm like, these are kind of the same spirit at their foundations.
Yeah, interesting.
It's like, that's why that song makes sense in my mind. It might be strange to some listeners, but to me, it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I hear it. And then you've got almost like a totally different sound on Storm, which reminded me, I'll be the first to say, you know, I'm not the biggest hip hop fan. You know, I'll listen to it. I love it. I was in New York maybe 3 weeks ago for work, and I got tickets to a private show that Anderson .Paak did.
Nice.
And I was like, wow, like it just blew my mind. And then I heard your song Storm, and I go, that just reminded me that, you know, hip hop is not, you know, my first foray to hip hop was Beastie Boys and Run DMC, which, interesting enough, those two albums got me into rock and roll, into rock music. But it reminded me that, you know, hip hop is not just that. Like there's more to it. And that song Storm is just amazing song for
Thank
sure.
you.
You know, it's jazz, there's funk, just amazing.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, that one, totally. You know, like hip hop is in a very interesting place now, I think, because it's almost 50 years old. And so the boundaries have just kind of burst open. You know what I mean? Like Anderson .Paak is hip hop, you know, even though he's an incredible drummer, incredible singer, incredible all around musician. But there's a big part of what he does that's like, you know, still pretty hip hop, you know?
Yeah.
The boundaries are just like, they just bursted open. You know, to me, it reminds me a lot of what eventually happened with rock music by like the 90s, where you have pretty distinct subgenres.
That's right.
You know, hip hop never really had that. It had regional sounds. That was a way you could describe different hip hop, but you never really describe rap music in terms of subgenres.
Yeah.
Like, but now I think we need that because it's just so big. You know, what Lil Nas X does.
Yeah.
And what Eminem does is
interesting.
Is so different. How can you even call it the same thing? You know, not like not unlike back in the 90s. Like, how could you call what Nirvana does and what Van Halen does the same?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Right? It was like they had to kind of say, no, this is alternative rock.
Yeah.
You know?
This is grunge. This is, yeah.
Yeah, like REM would be a maybe more stark contrast to like a Van Halen. Like they had to be like,
yeah,
let's call it something else, okay? Like,
yeah.
You know, and I think hip hop is getting to be in that place where it's like there's great music that's being made, but let's not pretend like Lil Yachty and Black Thought are doing the same thing.
Interesting.
You know? Like these are very, very different things. And yeah. So anyways, all that to say, yeah. So I guess all that to say, yeah, like Storm is something that I feel like I could do. Like I can experiment with, that song's got like a weird time signature, which is not normal for hip hop, but like hip hop is just whatever you want to do. And
no rules.
And definitely there's no rules. There's no rules. You can do like a 70s funk odyssey with rap on it and spoken word, and it's just like, sure, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I want to get to HipHop Evolution, but I want to ask you a couple of things. I don't know if you've ever come across that book. We still here?
No.
Yeah, it's
Mark Campbell.
Yeah, do you know Mark Campbell? Charity Marsh?
I talked to Mark Campbell 2 weeks ago or last week.
Okay, interesting. I've never met him. I got sent the book. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, great guy. I don't know if we'd ever met before, but great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, really important work.
I want to. There's a couple of points I sort of highlighted when I was going through this book. Really early on in the book, Charity and Marx they write, the Canadian music industry is not overly invested in supporting hip hop music in any sustained or significant way. What are your thoughts on that? You're nodding your head.
It's absolutely the case. I mean, that's just the track record, right? Like that's just the. If you look at the history, it is impossible to draw any other conclusion. Drake was here. Drake was around. Drake was in these streets, hustling his mixtapes. There was no deal. There was no push. Right? Like,
yeah.
America pushed that.
Yeah.
To this day, when I go to New York or Houston, they play more Drake than Toronto radio.
Really?
Oh, without question. To this day. But back then, it was like crickets. But down there, everybody loved it. Cardinal, like I've shared the stage with Cardinal like a million times, and like I'm sure I've seen no more than 2 performers in hip hop that are on his level. And I've played with Kendrick. I've played with everybody. Like Cardi is a generational talent.
Wow.
And he was not pushed. I'm telling you, Cardi's the only guy I don't like performing with. I don't like it. It's not
Why
fun.
is that?
Because he destroys everything.
You'd rather sit back and watch.
When I find out I'm on a bill with Cardi, I'm like, what's the word? Like, he's a generational talent, and Akon signed it.
So let me ask you this, because
it's like the list goes on and on. It's like the industry just never seems to be able to believe in the idea that the Canadian people might really want to listen to hip hop.
And whether it's Canadian hip hop or whether it's just hip hop stars.
Yeah, it's just like it just is this disconnect where they just don't feel like it will work or something, like they don't, partly because there's so few people that work in the industry side. At least this was the case for basically ever. Might not anymore, but was the case for basically ever. There was just so few people on the industry side that came from hip.
Okay.
Right? Like, so they couldn't see it. They couldn't imagine it. And, so yeah, that's like, I don't think you can look at the facts and dispute that statement.
That's really interesting. I thought you were going to, for some reason in my head, I thought you were going to disagree with it and sort of point out, because to me, it's like culture today, forget about music, but just culture today, the youth of it's like there's a hip hop culture that we're living in, but like the music isn't being supported or.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, so when I think about that word support, I think about, what is the infrastructure that's in place to promote a hip hop artist across this country, right?
Okay.
And by structure, I mean, like, what are the radio stations? What are the promoters and concert venues? What are the record labels? What are the management teams? What are the, that really have a foothold, that really have and they just don't exist. Like there was a moment in the late 90s where there was like maybe 2-3 hip hop radio stations in the country, but that's gone now. The CBC now has like a show or two that plays a bit of hip hop, but that's a very, 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 very recent development.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was just no way to do it. Like there was, infrastructure was not there. And so people didn't really believe that it was possible. It took numerous successes like Drake and Tory Lanez, and the list goes on, completely circumventing the Canadian industry.
Yeah.
For that to change a little bit, you know? So, cannot argue with that statement.
Interesting. Fair enough. How did HipHop Evolution come about for you?
Mm-hmm. I just lucked out, man. So the way that project started, there's a company in Toronto called Banger Films.
Yeah, yeah.
And they made a series called, I think it's called Metal Evolution, Headbanger's Journey.
Yeah.
That's considered like the metal doc, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And so if I have this right, they thought, hey, it'd be cool to do this in some other genres, you know? And so they pulled in Darby Wheeler.
Yeah.
Longtime producer, director. Used to work at Much Music actually as well, and produced Rap City for many years and stuff, programmed that show. And they pulled in Rodrigo Baskunin, who started and edited a magazine called Pound Magazine that was like super, super dope hip-hop magazine out of Toronto.
Okay. With
its own voice and style. Very, very cool magazine. And those two guys invited me to host. And my memory of that meeting, like I took the meeting basically on the strength of those two guys, like, cause I just, you know, I respect those guys a lot.
Yeah.
And, but my memory of that meeting is like, as they were talking, it like suddenly occurred to me, this was like around 2012 when we had this meeting.
Oh, wow.
It just occurred to me, like the thought occurred to me that like, wow, like this document doesn't really exist for hip hop, like on film. And if it doesn't happen soon, a lot of these pioneers aren't going to be here. And those thoughts occurred to me. Like, I really actually didn't think I would do it. I was just taking the meeting because like, I respect those guys a lot, you know? But something clicked for me where I was like, yeah, this kind of needs to be done now. Like it needs to be done and it needs to be done soon. And it would be really fun. So let's, you know, yeah, I'm down. And then as it goes with TV stuff, we got a green light like a year and a half later or something.
Okay.
And started filming. And we only thought we would make one season. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Or at least the content that's covered in the first season. We didn't even know it would be like a season. We thought maybe it'd be like a 2-hour film or whatever. But
okay,
like,
all right.
In any case, like it was supposed to be about the origins, right?
Yeah.
And then after that came out and got licensed to Netflix, Netflix became interested in making more.
Oh wow! Okay.
So that was never the plan.
Yeah.
But that's how it unfolded, and so it's been like a really cool journey, you know. I certainly feel like I lucked into.
Were you always a student of hip hop, or did you quickly have to like I better study up on this thing?
Yeah, well, I was learning the whole way.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if the show makes it look like I knew more than I did or whatever, but like I really was going place to place learning.
Wow.
You know, because the era that I came up in, it's like how could you learn about Memphis hip hop?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was impossible.
Yeah.
And then, like, how are you supposed to, or even in the early 2000s, like, it was very difficult. And everything was so regional just in terms of taste, right? Like,
yeah.
If, you know what I mean? Like, you and I think, are like of a similar age. It's like when we were growing up, it's like you kind of have to like what you like. You're not allowed to like everything.
Yeah.
That's a recent development that people are
so true.
You know, musically, you're allowed to like everything. So I really was learning. You know, I didn't know about Miami hip hop history.
Yeah.
So I was learning the whole time, which was fun, super fun.
Nice. Was you obviously met your in air quotes heroes, but was there one person where you were just nervous as heck that you were going to speak to, this one rapper, this one musician that never in a million years?
Did I think I would meet them?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few, you know, like QATip.
Okay.
Didn't think I would ever get to meet QATip. And Ali Shaheed, KRS-One. And then just like certain artists that are just beyond music, like beyond music, they're just these figures, you know, like Diddy, you know, or Ice-T, you know, like they've like transcended, like they're just like figures now, you know, and they'll always represent hip hop wherever they go, but they also have done so many other things. Like, oh yeah, it was endless in that way. Atlanta was so great. Like we got to connect with basically every single person.
Wow.
That we wanted to connect with in LA. Like all the organized noise, the producers that, you know, behind Outkast and Big Boy and CeeLo and Goody Mob, and you know, the list goes on and on. So it was endlessly like that, man. Super cool meeting all these folks. Some heroes, some like a little too before my time to be my personal heroes, but like legendary figures within hip hop. You know, Uncle Luke in Miami, like, is like super important figure. Of course, a little bit, you know, 1987. I was, you know, 5 years old. No one's letting me listen to 2 Live Crew, but like,
yeah.
You know, I understand he's super important to hip hop, to Southern hip hop, to music really in general, with the whole free speech battle. So yeah, it was like pretty cool in that way.
Nice. Sure. When we had Darby on, we asked him, you know, if you could, what episodes are missing? You know, what episodes did you wish you had time to do? And in my naive head, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to talk about Canadian hip hop, but he went straight to Europe. And he talked. There's a huge scene out there that, you know, he was saying that story needs to be told one day.
Yeah.
For you, what stories, if you could, what stories would you like to tell? What episodes would you like to make?
Yeah. So to me, in terms of like the time periods that we covered, but like we didn't cover these particular stories within them, I think of. My mind goes right away to regions that are like a little bit off the radar. And so there's not an easy narrative to pull them in, you know? So I'm thinking about like Bone Thugs.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. That their influence carries to this day, but because they came from Cleveland and it's difficult what they were doing was so different. It's like, from a storytelling standpoint, I think it's kind of hard to wrap them into the rest of our series, you know?
Yeah.
So they end up getting left out. Or Nelly in St. Louis would be another example. I think of, but what comes to mind most actually is all the artists from New Jersey.
Yes.
Because when you're thinking about the story of hip hop, of course you think about New York. And there were these scenes that, make it easy to tell a story, like native tongues. So now, if you're talking about native tongue story like we did, it's like you can touch on Tribe and De La and Jungle Brothers and Queen Latifah and Mona Love, But then New Jersey is a little bit outside of that, but you have these artists like the Fugees.
Yeah.
So huge.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Or Naughty by Nature. That's so huge. But they're just like, where do they fit within the narrative? It's hard to find a place to.
Interesting.
We don't have time with our show, right? Like,
yeah.
So, not that I write the show, but I'd imagine those were some of the challenges, right? Of trying to fit these really important groups like the Fugees or Naughty by Nature or Bone Thugs into the story, and I think it's because, there's no, there's no overarching narrative.
Yeah.
Kind of pull them, you know what I mean? They were kind of doing their thing. Anyways, so those come to mind as far as like artists that are within the time periods that we covered, but we didn't get to really touch on them. Slick Rick is one that stands out to me because he's often cited as an influence. I do think he's one of the major influences on MCing.
Okay.
And we didn't really get to touch on him, but we touched on a lot of the other ones like Rakim and Big Daddy Kane and Cool G Rap, that whole generation, Chuck D. And then if we were to go forward, there's a lot. To me, Darby would want to go to England, and it would be his decision for sure. My vote would be to go to the internet and look at how things changed online. Soulja Boy, Lil B. Some of these people that really through, whatever the online platform was at the time, SoundCloud, YouTube, ringtones, like all this stuff changed hip hop.
Interesting.
In some really fundamental ways. Like, I think Nas's Illmatic became the blueprint for what artists wanted to do. Like, they wanted to make a classic. And then I think what happened with SoundCloud and some of these platforms is that ideal got shattered. And because there were artists that are like, oh, who cares about making a classic? I'm going to upload 40 mixtapes this year.
Yeah. Crazy. Because you can.
Because you can.
Yeah.
And that to me just like broke the mold.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Shad, I'm looking at the time. Yeah. I know we don't have a lot, and I want to be respectful of your time. Is it okay if we go over a few minutes? Yeah.
I gotta go in like 10.
Okay, I'll make sure we're off. I think there's like another, whether it's another CBC radio show or a podcast, just your voice and the way you articulate yourself. Like, I'd listen to anything that you put out, to be honest with you, for sure. But I want to get to a lost venue. Yeah, we have a segment, lost venues, where we talk about a place no longer exists, but you've got fond memories. Maybe you've got weird stories from there. Is there a lost venue that you think fondly of?
Oh, so many. Well, maybe not so many. At least a couple, and definitely, post COVID.
Of course,
there's a couple, but there's one main one that comes to mind in my hometown of London, Ontario. Place called the Embassy Hotel.
Okay.
And that was where I played what I consider my first solo show. It's my first show after my first album was done. And I think I played my first show period there too. Saw my first rap show there.
All right.
Just an important venue in London. If you know anything about London, or your listeners know anything about London, it's a wonderful place to grow up. But the music scene, live music scene, was small. There wasn't a lot of spots. Called The Office, also rest in peace. Super legendary venue in London. Really the legendary venue in London. Radiohead played there, all sorts of tiny club, and Radiohead played there. But the Embassy Hotel for me personally is a major one. Saw my first rap show there. Played.
What did you see there?
Far Side.
Okay.
Yep. So saw my first rap show there. Played my first rap show there. That is where the independent scene, hip hop and other genres, really was when I was starting. So if I wasn't, playing all my first shows there, I was going to all my first shows there. Very important venue at a very important time for me personally. And super sketchy spot. Sketchiest part of town. But did all ages shows and felt safe for kids, in a weird way. In a weird way, felt like a very safe place. Maybe not physically, but in some other sense, in
sure.
some spiritual sense. It felt like this was home for music lovers.
Yeah.
So that's at the top of my list. And it's cool, actually. It's becoming, I think it's opening soon. It's becoming a affordable housing space.
Okay.
So that's cool. I'm glad it's, the better parts of it are living on. It was really sketchy.
Yeah.
But the good kind of spirit of it continues in that way. But that's my lost venue. I always got to shout out the Embassy in London. Super important spot for my little cohort of music in London. Yeah.
That is awesome. To wrap it up, this is Gregg's favorite question. What's in your earbuds these days, Shad? What are you listening to?
I'm listening to an artist named Cleo Soul.
Okay.
From the UK. She put out an album called Mother. That is definitely my favorite album of the year, hands down. Haven't stopped listening to it. Wonderful, wonderful soul singer. She's also in a group called Salt, SAULT.
Okay.
You're going to love this. I'm telling you.
All right.
You probably listen to Salt. From what I've heard from you personally.
Okay.
They have an album. I would start at the beginning with their album. They have an album called 5 and another one called 7. And if I would recommend you start there.
I will go listen to Salt. SAULT.
SAULT. So Cleo Soul is in that group, but her solo album came out this year, and I've just been stuck on it, for the last 4 or 5 months.
I think someone has recommended Salt before. That rings a bell.
Yeah, they are. They're basically the best. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. As soon as we're done, I'll jump on the onlines and check that out for sure.
Nice.
Shad, this has been a treat. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with the album.
Thank you.
Great music. Everybody should check it out. And best of luck next year going on tour, going around the world.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Peace, man.